Hi guys, so for this video, I'm going to cover the best new settings in Fortnite Chapter 2 Season 4. Now, if I'm gonna be completely honest with you all, I did not have this video planned. I literally made a keyboard and mouse settings guide like a week ago, and I thought that would suffice for the new season. As it turns out though, it does not. Tons of you guys have messaged me saying you're struggling with your FPS or finding good color settings. Thus, because I'm a man of the people, that's exactly what I'm going to cover today. I'll be looking at how the colorblind modes were changed in Season 4, the optimal brightness, as well as a bunch of FPS boost tricks for both console and PC. Last thing is that I'll try not to repeat myself because I made two similar videos to this last month. If I do, try not to roast me, roast Xro instead. Seriously, with all of that being said, let's get right on into the video. To begin, let's talk about your standard visibility settings. Last season I said to use 125% brightness and no colorblind mode. This was because the Chapter 3 map was incredibly dark at the nighttime. I believe Epic fixed it later on. Either way, this made it really hard to see your opponents. In Chapter 2 Season 4, that brightness issue is completely gone. All of the gameplay on your screen is me playing with 100% brightness, and to me, it looks great. The nighttime is not too dark, the daytime is very reminiscent of Chapter 1. The only problem I've run into is when the sun goes down, which I'll cover later. Here's a short little comparison of the 100% brightness that I recommend you use today compared to the 125% brightness option that you used last season. The extra brightness from the 125% option does not really do anything else other than washing out a lot of the colors. If you prefer that look, then sure, go ahead and use it. Me personally, I will be using 100% brightness and I recommend you do the same. Moving on to colorblind modes, and similar to the brightness option conundrum, my advice from last season is a little bit outdated. For Season 3, I said not to use any colorblind modes, especially not Deuteranope. Deuteranope made it really hard to see in the nighttime, so much so that Mongrel actually switched off of it. In Season 4, on the other hand, I personally think Deuteranope and Tritanope are the two best colorblind mode options you have. Let me quickly show you guys what I mean. Right now on your screen is the default no colorblind mode option with 100% brightness. It looks pretty solid, nothing to complain about. Then after that is Deuteranope 10, and this looks just as good, maybe even better. The greens and blues, at least to me, look much more rich. Third up is Tritanope, which again, I think looks pretty solid. It's kind of like a mild Deuteranope, even when it's on the highest strength. Last, and yeah, kinda least, is Tritanope. Tritanope, in my opinion, is not the way to go in Season 4. The game is already extremely bright, and you do not need the one colorblind mode option that will make it even brighter. Speaking of the game being too bright, I've actually seen a lot of complaints about this on Twitter. A ton of pro players are complaining about their games being way too bright at certain times. I actually noticed this myself while I was playing. There were random times where my builds would be so white that I could barely see them and barely edit. What I figured out is that this only happens as the sun goes down. For some very odd reason, the sunset makes your game look really bright. To try and fix this, I went ahead and tried out every single colorblind mode option. I tried out a bunch of different brightness options, but unfortunately, nothing fixes it. So if you've been wondering how to fix this, you really cannot at the moment. I guess we just gotta wait for Epic to. As for the best colorblind mode for seeing inside the storm, it really does not make that big of a difference anymore. For those of you that do not know, Epic completely changed the way the storm looks and works at the end of Season 3. They made it this really opaque purple color, they added a bunch of random rain animations to make it harder to see through, and they made it much more dense, if that makes any sense. CodeLife did a comparison of the old storm compared to the new one, and as you can see, the difference is insane. Epic very clearly wanted to nerf visibility in the storm. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, there's gotta be a colorblind mode that fixes this, right? Well, today is just not our day because, again, there is no fix. I'll throw up some clips that I found from CodeLife's video where he compared all the best Chapter 2 settings for seeing in the storm. I'll also link it down below. At the end of the video though, he really did not have a concrete answer. Like, do you guys even notice a difference between these colorblind mode options in the storm? I personally do not. If anything, I think no colorblind mode option looks the best since you can kind of make out details in the mountain. So the big takeaway and what I'll be doing is using whichever colorblind mode option I prefer outside of the storm. That is likely going to be Tritanope 7 or Deuteranope 8. I know for a fact it is not going to rely on how they look inside the storm because, as we just saw, they both look like butt cheeks on a stick. Moving on to the start of the in-game FPS boost, and my biggest tip I have for you guys is to turn off your replays. At the moment, turning off your replays is pretty much the only tweak that console players can make. They don't have any of the multi-threaded rendering that I'll cover, they don't have DX12. What they do have is the ability to record or to not record replays. Whenever you have your replays turned on, your PC or console is actively recording your gameplay in the background. Trust me, I get it, it's very good for going back and reviewing your mistakes. What you gotta realize is that this takes up an incredible amount of CPU processing power. Because Fortnite is very CPU dependent, we want our systems to focus on getting us the best in-game frames and not recording replays in the background. This especially applies for Season 4 since there's not been too many FPS fixes available, and just like with every new season, FPS is at an all-time low. So again, listen to me when I say turn your replays off. Second FPS trick, which I highly recommend everyone on PC utilize, is to stop playing on native resolution. Native resolution, or native res, is the highest in-game res that your monitor can support, aka 1920 by 1080. I use 1920 by 1080 since I'm a content creator, I gotta make my game look nice. The thing is, it is not good for getting me higher frames. You see, the higher resolution you play on, the more pixels you have on your screen, and therefore the more work your GPU has to do to render them. We want our GPU to do less work, especially if it's bottlenecked, which is why I recommend playing on any res that is not 1920 by 1080. That could be a stretched res, that could be a res with the same aspect ratio as 1920 by 1080, it could really be anything. Most pros you guys watch nowadays, like Young Calc, Liquid Stretch, Phase Bizzle, none of them use native resolution. They care way more about how their game feels and performs compared to how it looks, and therefore play on custom resolutions. Not to mention, a ton of them actually just prefer the way stretched res looks. Some popular stretched resolutions are 1722 by 1070, I made a video about that, 1750 by 1080, which I also made a video on, and 1798 by 1080. Again, I did make a video on that. I'm not going to show any tutorials on how to get stretched res because I made a few of them already, plus they would just take way too much time. On your screen now is my latest stretch res video and tutorial. What I do is I show how to display scale it, which is the newer and better way to get stretch res. It's a little bit confusing, so I wouldn't recommend everyone to do it, but I do also have this video which is about 2 months or 3 months old, and in this one I show the much simpler, older way that we're all used to. Both of these stretch res methods work extremely well and will undoubtedly improve your FPS, so just pick one and start using stretched res.
But Jerian, I hate stretch res. I don't want my game to be stretched.
Do not worry, little Timmy, it's alright. There are a bunch of resolution options you have that are not stretched that will still get you much better FPS. Alright, so I quickly hopped into game because I feel like people do not understand this. Right now, I'm using what I use by default, which is 1920 by 1080. This is how my videos usually look. This is also not stretched res, meaning my game is not stretched. The aspect ratio is still 16 by 9. What I can do by going into my settings is change my resolution up here or change it down here with my 3D res. These do the same exact things, except the 3D res is a little bit more confusing. The res bizzle and liquid stretch use is 1600 by 900. It's still technically a native res because you're not stretching it. This is what it looks like. It's a little bit blurrier. You can see my crosshairs a bit blurrier as well. You have much less pixels on your screen, meaning it's gonna look blurrier. Notice my frames are pretty consistent though, huh? In addition to that, if you're really struggling to get good frames, you can go all the way down to 1280 by 720. This one is even more blurrier. I can almost not see the middle of my crosshair, which is not too good. Then the other thing you can do is change back to 1920 by 1080 and start moving around this slider for your 3D res. This slider does the same thing that this does, except it's just in a percentage. So like 83% would be 1600 by 900. You can see it's the same exact thing. I just did the math, and 1280 would be 66%. You could see this is the same exact res, except it says I'm on 1920. All I did was change the 3D res. Why this is useful is that you can go all the way down to 25%, which is much lower than 1280. I'll really quickly show you how bad it is. Oh my gosh. This would be if you can barely run Fortnite. It's also awesome because if you go higher than, I believe I said 83% is 1600 by 900, you can get values that are less than 1920, meaning it's not native res. You'll still get an FPS boost, but it will not look as bad as 1600 by 900, and 1600 by 900 does not even look that bad. I bet you guys cannot even tell the difference between this and native, and I would actually get an FPS boost from it. I'm on 92%, I believe. It's obviously not the biggest boost, but it's better than nothing, and it's better than native. So I will say it one more time, only use native if you're like me, you're a streamer or a content creator. If you are not and you need to get better frames, use 1600 by 900, somewhere in between 83% and 100%. Use a stretched res, use anything, just do not use native. The second to last in-game FPS boost trick is to turn on multi-threaded rendering. As you can see here, multi-threaded rendering splits drawing work across multiple threads, which can dramatically improve performance on multi-core processors. You gotta make sure you're careful though, because it also says this can cause hitches and lower FPS on weaker hardware. All this means is that if you have multiple cores, turn it on. If you do not, turn it off. I'll really quickly show you guys how to check. On your PC desktop, yes, I'm still a Knicks fan and the Knicks still suck. Come down to the Windows logo on the bottom left, right click on it, go up to Task Manager and click that, and then when it pops up, go to Performance. It's one of the tabs on the top next to Processes. Below your CPU, which you do want to click on, you can see it says your base speed, your sockets, and your cores. You care about how many cores you have. The golden rule from what I've found is that if you have more than 4 cores, turn multi-threaded rendering on. If you have less than 4 cores, turn it off. I have 6, therefore I'm going to turn it on, and I do use it. It does give me an FPS boost. Like I always say, try both out and see what works best, but again, if you have more than 4 cores, definitely enable it. For the final of the in-game FPS tricks, we have my favorite, DirectX version 12. I've made a bunch of videos on DX12 and DX11, so I'll try not to repeat myself, but it is extremely important to be using the right DirectX version. Just like with your multi-threaded rendering option, your DirectX version will entirely depend on your specific PC. Me myself, I use DX12 because, as I'll show in a minute, it gets me much more stable frames. Alright, I just rebooted up my game. I am in DX11. I'll stare up in the sky, I guess, right here. DX11, the high is about 480. The low is 360, not too bad. Changing to DX12, we gotta restart. Oh yeah. Finally back in game with DX12 enabled. Again, high of 490. It actually went a little bit higher. I'm getting around 450, so I actually get higher frames than DX12 and more stable. That must be new with the update. Oh, and by the way, I'll put this video up on your screen right now. I covered DX12 extensively. I talk about everything you need to know about it if you want to be a DX12 expert and learn why it's so good. This is just a reminder and proof to you all that it does work, and for me, it's better. To wrap up the video, I'm really going to quickly walk through a basic Windows optimization guide that I kind of just made up. I did a really advanced guide with my boy AnimX like a month ago. Go check that out. But since you've all been begging me to make another one, I thought why not do a short and sweet one, so here it is. Even though you probably will not need it, the first thing we're going to do is set up a restore point. Just type in Control Panel in the bottom left, go to System and Security at the top, go 3 down to System, and then on the top left up here, select System Protection. That will bring up this page, and with it, you're going to want to hit the Create button. This allows us to create a restore point, Jerian, and now it's backing up everything, so in case you mess it up, in case anything goes wrong, you can just come to this page and hit System Restore, and everything will be put back to normal. The next thing we're going to do is come back to the Windows logo. This time, just click on it, then go up to the settings. When these pop up, we're going to go to Gaming, because we're gamers. And under game bar, turn game bar off. This is like a way worse version of recording replays. It takes up a ton of RAM, a ton of CPU power. There is no reason to have it on. Speaking of things to turn off, under that on the bottom left, you see captures. Make sure that is off as well. Third and finally for the game settings is your game mode. I have game mode on, and I know it's kind of a contentious topic. From what Windows says, when game mode is on, it prevents Windows updates from performing driver installations and sending restart notifications. It also helps achieve a more stable frame rate depending on the specific game and system. Back in the Windows settings, if you click on Systems instead of Gaming, you should see a lot more options that we're going to change around. The first is going to be notifications. You want to have all your notifications off. After that, down the list is Focus Assist. Same thing with notifications, turn it off. Third on the list is Power and Sleep. Once you're here, you want to click Additional Power Settings on the right, and you want to select Ultimate or High Performance. Usually they're under the Show Additional Plans, so they're hiding. You just want to make sure that you're not using Balanced, you're not using Power Saver, you are using the High or Ultimate Performance. Second to last Windows tweak we'll look at is our graphics. To get there, type in Graphics Settings. It's under System Settings, and you should see this page. From here, click Browse, then click either your SSD or your local disk, whichever you have Fortnite on, click that. Go to Program Files, Epic Games, Fortnite, Fortnite Game, Binaries, Windows 64, And finally hit Fortnite client Windows 64 shipping.exe. You want to press add, that's going to add it right here. And you also want to make sure you hit options. This is where we're going to put it on high performance, not the system default. Put high performance and save it. For the last and final PC tweak, we're going to right click on our desktop, go to NVIDIA control panel, up to the 3D settings tab at the top, adjust image settings with preview, and click use the advanced 3D image settings. From there, you can either select take me there, or you can just go to manage 3D settings, and you want to copy all of these. These are the best NVIDIA settings you can get. I will quickly show them all off. I'm not really going to go in depth explaining what they do. Just know that these are the best. And yeah, that is basically that. Overall guys, those are the best settings for Fortnite in Windows in Chapter 2 Season 4. Let me know down below which helped you out the most, as well as any I should include in future videos. On top of that, if this video helped you out or you learned something new, do be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel down here, and to turn on my post notifications. Shout out to everyone using code JERIAN. I truly appreciate you guys. You guys have been going ham on code JERIAN and not code itsJerian. Remember, that code is not mine, it's some random kid. Do not help that kid out. Use code JERIAN. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later!